Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. It appears education is in dire straits. Tertiary education now in focus as ASU is on strike, NASU is on strike, NAT is on strike, SANU is on strike. Now ASUP, the Association of Nigerian Polytechnic Academic Staff Union of Polytechnics, is threatening to go on a warning strike if nothing changes. And we just showed you some of their demands. Let's welcome the national president of the union, Comrade Anthony Ezigbe. Welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start by you giving us a background to some of those demands.
Okay. You may recall that last year, between 6th of April 2021 and 10th of June 2021, our union was on strike for 61 days. And at the end of that strike action, a memorandum of action was entered into between our union and the government. Now, the strike was suspended for a period of 3 months to allow government have the right environment to implement the items in that memorandum of action that are process-led. The 3 months period expired on 10th of September 2021. Unfortunately, within that 3 months window, the government was still unable to fulfill those items that are process-led. Now, 6 months after the 3 months expiration period, the government was still unable to, to fulfill their own part of the bargain. And when our union's National Executive Council met in its 102nd session in Adamawa State, a 1-month ultimatum was issued to the government, effective 4th of April 2022. And after the 1 month, which expired 4th of May 2022, the government has still not been able to fulfill its own aspects of the memorandum of action that was signed. And critical aspects, like you asked, include the release of the revitalization fund of 15 billion naira to the sector. Now, the background to this particular item is hinged on the outcome of the needs assessment survey of public polytechnics and colleges of technology in the country. That needs assessment survey took place in 2014, and an injection of 826 billion was recommended to help, revitalize, infrastructure amongst, within public polytechnics and colleges of technology in the country. Now, not a penny of this money has been seen in any of the polytechnics. In 2017, our union went on a strike, a 2-week strike, and within that period, the government offered a revitalization fund of 15 billion in lieu of implementation of the outcome of the needs assessment report. In February 2018, an application was made to Mr. President. That's 4 months after the offer was made. An application was made to the president for the release of the funds. Nothing was seen until we went on another strike in 2021, April, the last one. And in June last year, Mr. President graciously approved, the 15 billion. Now, after the approval, it's about 11 months now after the approval, and the funds are yet to be released. And sincerely, our union, if not, for us to lean, towards, decency, we would have been inclined to believe, that this could be a scam, because there is no how Mr. President will give an approval for release of funds conveyed to us since June last year, and as we speak, 11 months after, the funds are yet to be released. And if you trace back, like I said, this offer had been since 2017. So what it means is that inflation has already eaten deep, into the value of this particular money. Now, the second item there that you have speaks to the issue of the minimum wage arrears. The current regime of salaries came into life in April 2019, and from then, our members have been owed 10 months in arrears of this money. What it means is that legitimate emoluments of our members, portions of legitimate emoluments of our members have been withheld without their consent, by the government since then. And this is not tidy at all. Then another item that is really of serious importance to us is the issue of review of normative instruments for institution management and programs accreditation across all public, all the polytechnics and colleges of technology in the country. This is very important to us because it speaks to regulation. It speaks to maintenance of standards. Like we know, polytechnics are currently being established, at random in different states, by different individuals as private polytechnics. And the conditions of teaching and learning in these places do not guarantee that the right quality of products, will come out of that system. We have state polytechnics today in Abia State, where salaries are owed our members for 30 months. Our members in Benue State polytechnics are on strike. Our members in Plateau State polytechnics, in the polytechnics and monotechnics in Plateau State have been on strike. Those in Ogun State are operating with, serious levels of deprivation. The same in Osun State, where they have, half salaries owed them for over, 1 year. And the stories continue. And then because of the provision in the Constitution that speaks to, concurrency with respect to establishment of, of institutions of higher learning, the aspects of regulation are national in nature. Those ones, exist at the pleasure of the federal government. And the regulatory agency, as we speak, is a federal agency called National Board for Technical Education. And so we are saying that using the instrument of regulation, these proprietors across different states, and individuals who have desired to, to operate polytechnics in Nigeria should be whipped into line. If you are not ready to fund polytechnics, provide funds to take care of, the needs of staff and, and overhead, provide funds, for infrastructure, equipment, and all that is needed to run the system according to the standards, as established. Please don't operate one. We'll get
to standards, Comrade Ezeibe. Let me come in there. We'll get to standards. We have time for, an exhaustive discussion, I hope. But let's manage our time. I recall that you said in one of your interviews after a strike embarked upon last year that it had begun to yield results, particularly because the governing councils had now been instituted and visitation panels had not been instituted. In that regard, did it also lead to government saying anything specific about the timeline of the release of the 15 billion naira commitment made for the revitalization of Nigerian polytechnics? 2 in 1. And then you shunned a May 9 meeting, which was only days ago, saying that it fell short of collective bargaining processes. What do you mean by that?
Okay. Well, yes, one of the gains of the last action was the constitution and the inauguration of governing councils across all the federal polytechnics. This was very important because prior to that time, the governance structure of those federal polytechnics, was not complete. And as a consequence, staff appraisal processes could not be completed. Principal officers like rectors, bursars, registrars, deputy rectors could not be appointed, as well. And so at the commencement of that strike, the government reconstituted the governing councils and inaugurated same. And as we speak, staff appraisal processes, have been going on smoothly, as a consequence. Now, the visitation panel, reports, activities has been, concluded, and the reports have been submitted. The white paper is being developed, and we are also looking forward to the implementation of the white paper, from the visitation panel reports. Now, the issue of the 9th of May meeting that our union did not attend. For the records, the period of ultimatum that was given to the government was between 4th of April to 4th of May. And so it actually, raises questions about commitment, that within the period of the ultimatum, no meeting was convened. Now, on the 9th of May, this meeting was convened, And we, of course, we said that it fell short of the requirements for collective bargaining processes. You cannot invite our union to a meeting making reference to, to a letter of ultimatum from our union, and then invite us to, to a joint, meeting with other unions. We do not think that the atmosphere was, good enough and could lead to addressing our issues. We felt that that was, a show. We felt that that meeting was not structured to meet our demands and satisfy our demands, and we do not attend meetings for fun. We are more interested, as a matter of fact, in implementing the items in the signed memorandum of action. I mean, those items are straightforward as it were, and so we felt that that meeting, as a matter of fact, was not structured to address our issues. In collective bargaining processes, you attend to the needs of individual unions as they come. The other unions that we are invited to join in the discussion, we are not aware of their demands. Even if the demands are the same, the perspectives will certainly, be different. And so, like we said earlier, it fell short of, of recognized standards with respect to collective bargaining, and we left, that meeting. But then, to make amends, the government invited us to another meeting yesterday. So yesterday, we were at a meeting, with officials of the Federal Ministry of Education, separately with our union.
And what was the outcome of that one? What was the outcome of that meeting, Mr. Ezebe?
Well, the outcome was hinged on, the usual appeals for more time and for consideration. Of course, the appeals had already been heeded even before they were made, because our strike is not an indefinite one. The proposed strike is not an indefinite one. It has provided another window of 2 weeks for the government to fulfill these items, because like I said earlier, they are pretty straightforward. There is actually no complication at all, and officials in the Federal Ministry of Education understand this much. They understand the fact that our union has been very patient all through this while, and there is every need, actually, to attend to these needs. So already, without their asking, the 2 weeks, a 2 weeks period of grace has been, afforded them, and we want to, believe that they will act fast, so that our National Executive Council does not declare an indefinite action.
I wanted to, initially when you were talking, you kept mentioning government. I would like us to decrypt government, because most times when we talk about government, it's just so generic and so vague. To be specific, who in particular are you speaking with, or has your union been speaking with, in the Ministry of Education? Just to be clear. And when you say you're expecting response, from whom specifically is your union, the Academic Staff Union of Polytechnics, expecting a response, and who is supposed to take action?
Okay, thank you. As higher institutions, we are directly under the supervision of the Federal Ministry of Education. The Federal Ministry of Labour and Employment only plays the role of a conciliator. And of course, unfortunately, in this matter, we don't know why they refused to play their role. But principally, the Federal Ministry of Education acts as the supervising ministry, and the dispute is actually between our union and the Federal Ministry of Education. We've met with the Honorable Minister for Education on Tuesday evening, and yesterday's meeting he was unavailable, so the permanent secretary chaired. We've had interface with our regulatory body, the management of National Board for Technical Education, led by the executive secretary, and we've had a lot of meetings also with the chairman committee of governing councils of polytechnics in Nigeria also. So our expectations is actually from our supervising ministry. Our supervising ministry is supposed to interface other agencies like the Federal Ministry of Finance and Budget Planning with respect to issues around release of funds. Our supervising ministry is expected to call our regulatory body, the National Board for Technical Education, which is an agency under them, to question on issues around regulation. And our supervising ministry is also supposed to hold accountable or to account chairmen and members of governing councils in different polytechnics, including principal officers who are going against provisions of the Federal Polytechnics Act as amended in 2019. So you can now see, the fact that principally our issues are with the Federal Ministry of Education.
Okay. Well, on that same one, you've spoken to the fact that, there have been meetings held. And this agreement was from 2017, you said. What reasons were adduced to you by the Honorable Minister of Education and all those other people that you've met with for not meeting these demands as and when due, especially now that you've extended a 3-day warning strike to 2 weeks, another 2-week warning strike? And if what has happened with ASU is anything to go by, I fear an extension. This is me now, afraid that this might extend. So what reasons have been given to you for not meeting those demands as agreed by this same government?
Well, the reasons, of course, they are all well rehearsed. On issues around funding is paucity of funds. Issues around, the other items that have, administrative processes attached to them. They talk about the issues around, bureaucracy. But of course, like I said earlier, and they know that these excuses are actually watery at this point. They are watery. They can't pass anymore because you can't tell us that since 2017 you've not been able to commit. You cannot be able to commit 15 billion naira revitalization fund to revitalize infrastructure, in this sector. It's not. We can't continue to accept, that excuse. I've never seen this government or governments in Nigeria concede to funds, being in excess of needs. There is always, shortage of funds everywhere with respect to needs or demands by different sectors. But it then speaks to issues around priorities. What is the priority of those in government per time? I do not think that the priorities at this time are correct. It's the fact that after several years of having the needs assessment report come out, another 4 years of offer for the 15 billion naira revitalization fund, that the right priority has been given to education, and in particular, technical and vocational education as represented by polytechnics and colleges of technology in the country. If the right priority is given, I'm very sure that this fund would have been released a long time ago.
And what, in your opinion,
of the other one,
go ahead, please.
That that speak to the other ones that speak to administrative processes. I think that it is self-indicting for the government or for the ministry to concede to the fact that these things take time and bottlenecks here and there. It is self-indicting. Our systems must be made efficient. They have to be service driven. We need to evolve systems that will address issues as they come. There is no way you can explain that since 2017 the scheme of service and conditions of service that govern career progression and duty prescription for members of staff across polytechnics and colleges of technology in Nigeria have been undergoing review since 2017. What is being reviewed? Different committees from one committee to the other. You can't explain the fact that Conti's 15 issues are still unresolved from 2009 till date. It is self-indicting to concede to the fact that these things take time. Does it also take time to hold to account persons, governing council members, chairmen, principal officers that are undermining provisions of the law? And so these are, like I said earlier, these are watery excuses. And even those giving the excuses, I think they have also grown tired of proffering these excuses. They cannot, they cannot continue to hold water.
Mr. Izibe, one of the things that usually confuse me, if I can, for want of a better word right now, is that a good number of people who are in the Ministry of Education, as in various other agencies, ministries, departments of government, came from schools such as yours. So, and the issues we are talking about, just as you said, They aren't new. You just talked about a Conti's agreement that dates back 2009. So some people would have come from maybe a polytechnic or a university and gotten into government to work with government as civil servants and all of that. So how do you feel about the fact that some of the people who went through the system of your school, through a university system or a polytechnic system, in your own case, are in government now working in these ministries, departments, and agencies, and these things are happening to polytechnics? How does that make you feel?
Well, it's very unfortunate, really. It's really very unfortunate, and it speaks to the system. If the system is programmed in such a way that the best cannot be seen from our public service, the best cannot be gotten from our institutions of higher learning, or even from the the basic to secondary, up to the tertiary, you will see a consistent deterioration of service delivery across different facets of our national life. And and like I said, it is very, very unfortunate. It's not just about products from the polytechnics. It's all over the place. It's very clear, for all to see that private enterprises are better run. It's very unfortunate. We look forward to a system that will promote merit, a system that will promote efficiency, and a system that that will be service driven. I'm not very comfortable if we start holding individuals responsible for this. I think that this is a system issue, and something that the operators of our system really need to address.
I just want to get clarity before I begin another line of questions, is that after that meeting during which government made appeals for you to be patient and understanding, you have extended 3 days notice to 2 weeks notice before you embark on strike. And how will a failure to meet your demands at that time, how will it inform your next line of action?
Well, just like you pointed out, we've given 2 weeks plus 3 days for the government to meet with these demands. And that decision came from the right organ of the union, and that is the National Executive Council of the Union. I sincerely trust in the judgment of that particular organ of our union to also do justice to the next level of decision-making when the period of the 3 days and then the 2 weeks run out without the government doing the needful. That decision is actually left for the National Executive Council of our union. It's either they decide in their next gathering to go into an indefinite action if the demands are not met or satisfactorily met, or they can also decide to give more time. The decision is actually that of the National Executive Council of the Union. It's actually beyond my person.
You were beginning to talk about standards at the start of this segment. Let's now look at related issues. Governments seemingly believe now that polytechnic education is no longer relevant, and they quote, our colonial masters who have also jettisoned polytechnic education. And in line with that, some polytechnics, governments have begun to convert some polytechnics to universities. Where does that leave university education? And give us a sense of how the academic community in existing polytechnics, how do you feel about this?
Okay, to put the record straight, I don't think that the government has come out with any policy in saying that the polytechnics or the certification given by the polytechnics is no longer relevant to the national economy. As a matter of fact, the national policy on education, still prevails, and the national policy on education actually provides for the establishment of polytechnics in every state of the federation by both the federal government and different states. And that is why the government has been trying to establish new polytechnics all over the place. So it's not very correct to say that the government has considered or accepted the fact that that the polytechnics are no longer relevant. Just last month, 3 new federal polytechnics were established. Last year, 6 new federal polytechnics were also established. We know of state governments that run more than one state polytechnic in their domain. Now, on the issue, and that speaks to the issue of converting polytechnics to universities. We've seen that now in Lagos State, where the Lagos State government recently converted Lagos State Polytechnic Ikorodu to a university. We've also seen it in Delta State, where the Delta State government converted the Delta State Polytechnic, Ozoro, one of the 3 state-owned polytechnics were in that place, to a polytechnic. Now, the one of, to a university rather, the one of Lagos State beats one's imagination because it speaks to a lack of consistency with respect to vision. Those who drafted and brought to life the National Policy on Education, we do not think that they've made any mistake. The fact that that particular policy document has not been reviewed towards sending polytechnics, to extinction still means and still reinforces the fact that these institutions still have the potentials to provide the level of manpower, skilled manpower that will add value to the nation's economy. We verily believe this. What we are lacking and what this particular subsector, in Nigeria's tertiary education landscape is lacking is the required level of attention with respect to funding, the required level of attention with respect to supervision, and the required level of attention with respect, to regulation. On the existing polytechnics and standards, and that is why if you look at those demands, like I pointed out, one of our demands is a review of the normative instruments for the accreditation of the institutions themselves, the management structures, as well as the program's accreditation processes. And we are doing this because we found out that standards are not being kept. The different state governments are establishing polytechnics, and they are only doing this to attract funds from the Tertiary Education Trust Fund. If you look at the last allocation figures that was just released a few days ago, surprisingly, even within the 2:1:1 sharing ratio, you will see that each college of education is supposed to get about 447 million, while the polytechnics are going to get an amount within the region of 360 million or thereabout. Now, this is very difficult, to justify, other than the fact that we have a proliferation of polytechnics sharing, or partaking in the pool of resources that have been made available, for the polytechnics. And of course, we know that these polytechnics, demand a lot of funds because this is skill-based education. And because it's skill-based education, we need a lot of facilities for the studios, for the workshops, and for the laboratories to train young Nigerians. And unfortunately, we see funds now being allocated, even from the intervention agency TED fund, now getting smaller than those from the other tiers.
So to that effect, then,
we have been saying
Mr. Ezibe, just 1 second.
If
just a
state
second.
Government wants to establish.
Just 1 second, Mr. Ezibe. In the light of what you just said now, dwindling resource allocation to tertiary education, particularly to technical education in in the case of polytechnics, what then does that say? The way you put it earlier, you said it's a lack of priority. But from what you're saying now, it would seem like it's a lack of interest. That's how it seems. Because if resources continue to dwindle, allocation continues to dwindle to education, tertiary education, technical education in your case, and issues concerning tertiary education continues to get less and less attention that gets postponed from time to time over and over again. What then would you say? Would you then say it's still a lack of priority or a lack of interest?
Well, let me correct. First of all, let me correct an impression. You know, the sharing formula for TED Fund, which is an interventionist agency, by their law, by the TED Fund Act, is 2:1:1. That is to say, 2 portions of the funds available to universities as a pool, 1 portion to polytechnics, and then 1 portion to the colleges of education. And then from this pool, it is now distributed, to the institutions that are supposed to benefit. And that is why, like I said earlier, the polytechnics are now growing more in number, and therefore its own pool, when you now share it, it now gets less than what others are supposed to get, for instance, in the colleges, of education. Now, on the issue of dwindling resource allocation, that is even traceable, to the budget, to the appropriation document. Now, for education in general, it has been between 5 and 9%, in recent years. It has never exceeded 9%, and so it speaks to priorities. It speaks to the commitments of the governments of the day and even previous governments to the growth and development of education, and and the need to anchor sustainable growth and development of this nation to the growth and development of the education sector.
That light.
I've never seen
in that light,
a society or
just
a
one
nation.
second again, just so we have some understanding. In that light, would you say government, from what you just said now, would you say governments over the years consider education important to the growth of Nigeria?
Of course, the evidence is there to suggest that the government has been paying lip service to its commitment to education of the citizens. Clearly, if the government is committed, all of these industrial actions will not be happening. If the government is committed enough, then all of these breaches in agreements will not be happening. So we see a lack of of commitment to the development of education in the nation. We've said this severally, and it is still playing out. You put your money where your mouth is. If, with respect to budgetary allocations, the sector continues to get, shortchanged, then what it means is that the right level of attention is not being given. I had already said it earlier that even for our own sector, the right level of supervision is not being given. The right level of regulation is not being given. If all of these are in place, I don't think that you're going to have the unions embarking on strikes upon strikes upon strikes. The strikes are actually a means of protest by stakeholders in the system. Look, that this sector, they are not meeting, this sector is not meeting its mandate. This sector has a responsibility that has been given to it from the National Policy on Education, and because of paucity of funds, because of poor regulation, because of poor supervision, that this mandate is not being fulfilled. And the stakeholders are not happy. They are not getting fulfillment working, in this sector, and that is why you continue to see, brain drain in the sector. Persons are leaving the sector in search of places where they can, express themselves, better and contribute more to national development, and their contributions are equally, recognized. So it goes without saying, if there is the requisite level of commitment, we will not be having strikes in the sector. And that is even beyond, the polytechnics this time around. I'm now speaking to tertiary education, in general. If the government has been committed enough in injecting, the right level of funding, if the government is committed enough in providing the right level of regulation, if government is committed enough in providing the right level of supervision, I don't think that we'll be where we are today.
We hope that perhaps by proxy or directly, government is watching, and perhaps this will elicit that commitment that you so desire. And of course, other stakeholders desire to solve the problems of education in the tertiary level in the country. Mr. Anthony Ezebe, National President, Academic Union of Polytechnics.
My name is Anderson, please, not Anthony.
Mr. Anderson, sorry, I beg your pardon. Mr. Anderson Ezebe,
thank you.
Thank you for coming on Sunrise Daily.
Thank you very much.
Ayo.
Well, yeah, I guess it's time for us to take another break. And as you said, I like the way you said it, by proxy or directly.
Or directly.
Someone should be watching. We'll take a short break, and when we return, The issues are unending. This time it's politics. Stay with us.